What up? What up? Today is April 21st, 2025, and this is another market recap. So, this is for Monday, first day of the week. I didn't really trade Friday of last week. That's why I didn't put out a video, but a little under the weather right now, if you can tell in my voice. Have been most of the weekend. So, I didn't really trade Friday, just kind of left it where it was. I kind of forgot that it was Good Friday. So I checked a couple of different times with the spreads on stuff like euro dollar, for instance, which normally is like zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.4 for me, was a 1.5 to 2 spread. So everything else was just astronomical. So you couldn't really even trade Friday. So Friday was a dud. And so I ended last week at the negative 3R of realized profits less loss. But overall, for the week, I felt pretty good. I felt good with identifying setups. It's just the ones that we were able to execute on didn't play out at the end of the day. And that's just kind of part of the edge. So today, like I said, I'm still somewhat under the weather. So I got up at 7 a.m. I walked in here kind of groggy. Just checked charts real quick. I didn't really see anything. I went back to bed. My 8 o'clock alarm goes off. I checked the charts again. I didn't really see anything. I went back to bed. And then I got up right before the 9 o'clock hour for the day. And the first setup I really saw was this euro dollar. Kind of CBO. If we go back in time here, go back to roughly here. It played out, right? And I think it's a valid trade. There's just like one thing that really kind of threw me off about it. I mean, euro dollar itself is pretty overextended, especially if you flip it to like a daily time frame and it's approaching a pretty key level, a level that I'm on watch for right now to take as like an ABO kind of target for later this evening or tomorrow or whenever. So I know that this is overextended and it needs a pullback. So I have a bearish bias on it, like a short-term kind of bearish bias. And then we got this sort of kind of head and shoulders pattern, right? Right here with slanted neckline. It's probably my least favorite out of out of the different variations of head and shoulders, just due to like this slanted neckline doesn't give you a lower low. So it doesn't give you like a full trend change. It does give you a higher low, but it doesn't give you a lower low, right? So that's the kind of like weird bit about it. And then this bit of price action right here. So this price action right here was a little weird to me. Because if you look at this from like the wave perspective, right? You have wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. So in the Elliott wave theory, this wave 5 is concluded right here. So you could say that this could turn into a new trend change in a bullish wave. But I mean, it had a lot of stuff in the way. It had the neckline, it had the EMAs, it had a fib level. By the time I saw it, it was already sitting at 0.5 fib. So that's why I kind of have it position sized a little bit above 0.382 here. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this. And to be honest, if this bit of price action was not there, so if price just went down, up, and then continued right here, but just continued past the neckline, and then the pullback right here was for this pullback, and you just deleted this bit of this pullback, this little price action right there. So that would have been a wave 4 pullback, and so I would have been playing the wave 5 CBO. I would have had no qualms with this trade at all, because I would have already had both my lower high and my lower low. But I mean, I still kind of have them too, if you look at this 10-minute chart. But yeah, it's just this bit of price action right here just sketched me out a little bit. So it gave a live entry, or it gave, you could have just entered. I could have just entered as soon as I saw it. That's kind of how I position sized it, right? Just right at 0.5 fib. Would have entered somewhere around here. A 10 pip stop and 20 pip target. With the way I manage, this trade would have played out for probably, I think, 1.3R more than likely, because it would have pushed down below the 50 EMA here on the 30-second chart, and I would have gone to P1, so I would have clipped the high right here. And then on this pullback and continuation, once it broke that low right there, I would have clipped right here for a little bit more than break even, so sitting at like 0.4, 0.5. And then as price kind of continued to push, I would be watching on my 5-second chart more than likely, because right here I'm going to be sitting at like 0.6, 0.7 R. So I don't really want to hold a pullback at this point. I just want to capture what I can. So I more than likely would have exited on a clean break of the 50, which we got about right there. So that would have been 1.3 R. So I think it's a valid trade. I think it could have been taken. So I recorded it as a potential mistrade for the day, but I primarily stayed out due to this bit of price action right there. If that wasn't there, this would have been a beautiful trade. The 10 o'clock hour, I had this dollar Swiss on watch. Let me change this. Dollar Swiss. Let's go to right there. Overall, like it's another CBO. It's an IBO on the 10-minute chart, and it's still kind of also a CBO-esque on the 30-second. I think this was a trade. It's just something I'm typically not going to take. I'm still like recording it and just keeping tabs on this and putting it in the journal just to see if it's something, if I just want to approach stuff like this in the future, like no matter what. But if you start counting waves here, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5, right? And this is roughly almost as small as I can go at a 6 pip position. So I could go 1 pip less. My issue though is at the time of the trade, my stop isn't even below the EMAs. So it's not really protected. It's not below the trend line that it broke. Yeah, I felt like it was too tight. I felt like it was too shallow of a pullback, even though it was 2.382 measuring from here. I almost really kind of wanted to measure it from here, right? And if we're measuring from there, it never would have pulled back to 0.382. If you're looking at it from like a 10-minute perspective, so like a 10-minute IBO perspective, then it never would have pulled back to value. On the 2-minute time frame, though, technically, if you're just following this trend here, it did pull back. And it would have only been limit order. And it would have played out for roughly 1.35 or something like that. So it would have triggered there on a limit. On this first break, goes to P1. Never comes back and retests. It just continues going. So roughly, I would either have moved my stop to 1-to-1, or I'd just be sitting here watching my finger over the button ready to close. And more than likely would have closed on the break of that 5-second right there, EMA. It's a pretty clear kind of trend on your 5-second, pretty clear break of it. So quick trade for 1.35. So potential 2.65 R for the day is what it could have captured in these 2 hours. I think I have kind of valid reasons for not taking either trade, but still something to watch. And I position size this here, is this something I'm starting to pay attention to, is possibly trying to play some of these micro time frame, like larger trend breakouts with a kind of a stop clip below the lows to different kind of daily levels, right? Like if I could take that kind of trade, let's just superimpose this onto like this scale, right? So this is a 1 hour chart now. So I'm entering this 2 levels down on like a 2-minute chart. So here it looks like my stop's all right, but if you flip to a daily, it looks stupid tight. But if I'm able to time it like that and use those kind of trend breaks, what I have noticed is that sometimes when price breaks these trends, like breaks these like overall nice trend lines that they've been respecting multiple times, sometimes it'll break and give me an entry with like a pullback. And then sometimes it'll just run to like the 10-minute 200, which is the 1 hour 50, right? And I was thinking the way that I could possibly capture some of these moves, and I don't know if it's going to be worth it or not. I'm kind of trying to position size them to see like what the R to R is. Do they play out? Do they not play out? It's not something I'm actively trading right now. It's just something I'm paying attention to. And if I position size these things, like pretty much enter on a clean 2-minute break of the trend line. So that would be roughly right there with a stop clipped below the lows. And then a target of roughly the 1 hour 50. And so if we go back here, that's like 1.69 R, right? So it allows me at that point to never have to wait for a pullback is kind of my thought behind these entries. It's very similar to swing trading, using like when you're swing trading, you're targeting daily runs, right? And then sometimes swing traders will use the 1 hour chart with the same concept. They'll have like a clear trend. You can draw in a pattern. I actually think I could show you one like here on euro dollar, right? Say if price just keeps coming up and then price breaks this 1 hour EMA with a 1 hour close, you could then position size it with, you know, say the entries right here, stop clip right above the highs, and then a potential target of whatever, say it's the daily 50, right? And you could position size like that. It's called an SBO, right? A swing breakout strategy. So I've been thinking as I've missed a lot of these lower time frame trades. What are we on $1 Swiss? Yeah. These same concept essentially, right? But a lot of times on these 2-minute, if they break it, they'll just run. But a strategy like this guarantees an entry. You can always enter a trade if you are just waiting for the break of a pattern like that. And once you have a close above it, just take the trade. So from that kind of thought process, I'm thinking about position sizing these to, you know, at least a 1-to-1 to the 1 hour 50. But really kind of whatever it is, but the minimum is probably 1-to-1. And then the rest of it, you could potentially position size to either the 4 hour 50, or you could push these even further to like the daily 50. And when you do some of that, like it starts to get pretty nutty R to R. I just don't know how likely it is to capture a move from like there to there. But I think pushing something to the 4 hour 50 is probably pretty doable. So if you're able to catch something down here, in this case, if it breaks the 1 hour 50 at that point, it's going to become a 1 hour IBO. So you'll have to hold a pullback more than likely, or it'll just do the same thing it did 2 levels down on the 2-minute time frame, and it just runs. And it just runs straight to the 4 hour 50 and doesn't give you an entry on a 1 hour IBO. So, but if I'm able to position size these things from stuff like that to the 4 hour 50 with 4-to-1s, 5-to-1s or more, then even if I took, you know, 2 to 3 losses, or the strike rates on it is only 50%, or maybe even a little less than 50%. I mean, hell, I could be right 1 in 5 times and still have a relatively, you know, slight edge. It wouldn't be a great profitable edge at that point, but it would be something. And you can still actively manage these things, right? Like I could still at least move them to break even and lessen my risk at certain different points. So just something I'm watching and paying attention to. The same hour at 10 a.m. though, I didn't see either one of these trades, pound dollar or dollar CAD. Unfortunately, I paid attention at the beginning of the hour. I saw this dollar Swiss. I saw the very quick pullback and it immediately started pushing. And I was like, all right, well, that trade's gone. I ain't going to worry about it anymore. And because I'm not feeling super well, I just stopped looking at the charts, to be honest. I just came back at 11. But normally I kind of just sit here and scan. And I had been watching this dollar CAD, and I still am watching dollar CAD for a potential long. And I think I had a pretty nice one right here. I drew in this line. This is for some later on stuff, but we'll delete it for the second here. But, similar to dollar Swiss, you have this clean break of a trend. It's the same bullish price action on the 10-minute and the 2-minute, so those two time frames align. You've got room to move to the 1 hour 50, so that's all good to go, right? Same time at the entry, this is a CBO on the 2-minute, and it's essentially an ACB on your 30-second, which is what you want to see. I think in a perfect world, you really want to see an ACB on the 30-second. If you're targeting a CBO anyways, you want to see an ACB on the 30-second, a CBO on the 2-minute, and an IBO on the 10-minute. And this trade had a number of those, right? Like it's kind of an ugly-ish IBO, but it's still an IBO on the 10-minute, and it's a CBO on the 2-minute, and it's an ACB on the 30-second. So it had everything there, like a very solid trade that I just didn't see. So with a pivot order entry, say a 6-pip position size, so we're going to have at least, an easy 1-to-1 target below the lows there, 2-to-1 target roughly there. So an easy 2-to-1 trade. You wouldn't have to do much management in this. It would have broke. You got a P1 kind of here. Superimpose this over here, right? We got a P1, but it's almost likely you would have been tapped out depending on where the P1 stop was, but more than likely it probably would have been roughly here for me, so hopefully it would have been fine. And then would have just continued to push to target. So this trade didn't end up pushing even further, though, if we get out of the replay. I don't know where my stuff went. But yeah, like our 2-to-1 target was roughly here, and it just kept trucking. So it played out as a beautiful 10-minute IBO into a 10-minute CBO. And then it actually ended up giving a 10-minute CBO entry, and we'll get into that in a moment. And that happened around the 12 o'clock hour. So a potential 2R right here that I should have captured today, and I didn't. This is the first valid trade, I would say, of the day. Like I had no kind of issues with it, unlike euro dollar over here, of that weird kind of price action. And then this, shallow pullback price action type. This was the first pretty solid trade of the day that I just didn't see. And then pound dollar at the same time, this is when 10 o'clock hour. So you come back in time here, 10 o'clock. Also had a setup, which I don't know where you can draw this from. It's not as great, but it still is something, right? It had a break, pullback to value. It's more kind of viewable on the 10-minute time frame, and then a move downwards. But this is something that could have been captured. Not as nice as dollar CAD, but still something, right? I would have considered either one of these trades if I was in front of the computer. But I saw it when I came back roughly at 11, right before the 11 o'clock hour, as I was doing my pre-hour scan. I was like, damn. It was more like damn really with dollar CAD, because I've been actively watching this pair for a couple of days for potential like micro time frame long entries to kind of target a pretty large movement on this. And I'm still entertaining it as well on a daily time frame. See, this is another example of like having a pattern break. I did not take this trade, but I position sized it as like a pullback to the first EMA on the daily time frame, so the daily 200. But a stop below the lows, a 1 hour close, break of the trend line. It's kind of a falling wedge pattern, and then seeing how that plays out. I've not traded a lot of stuff like this. I usually wait for the break and wait for the pullback. But I know a number of people that do use a strategy like this, and it's successful. It works. So just something to pay attention to. But yeah, because I've been paying attention to dollar CAD for so long, kind of kicked myself a little bit for missing this trade today. And we already went over pound dollar. And then I had nothing the 11 o'clock hour. And then the 12 o'clock hour, I had dollar CAD again, but it was as a CBO. And it didn't pull back enough for me to enter. I think it did. I readjusted my position size here, but I originally had my position size like this, right? And we can go back here. All right, where am I? I'm lost. I originally had the position size kind of like this, right at 0.382, the EMAs and whatnot. But I think similar to last week, as we were kind of discovering, is just on some of these micro time frame, and the 10-minute run is still a micro time frame play. And honestly, even I think in any realm, even if it's a 1 hour run perspective, I might need to change a little bit of my entry point. So because I didn't feel well over the weekend, I haven't really had the time to dive in and go through and look at all my previous trades to see if my theory of, moving my entry just a few pips above the level I want to enter at is more beneficial, or if it would affect the strike rate or things of that nature. But I think realistically, I should have been targeting an entry right at this kind of horizontal support level. I mean, it was the extreme lows that it had broken, and now it had broken back above them. And it's the first level in which it's coming back for a retest, is that before it gets to 0.382, before it gets to either of the EMAs. Granted, this trade is sitting right on the 1 hour 50, and it would have just pushed below that, got a retest, and then continued back up. So it doesn't really have a great break of the 1 hour 50. That's the one negative with this trade, I would say, is you could almost argue, just looking at the 1 hour chart, like, yeah, we have a slight break of this trend line, but it still kind of looks like just a pullback within trend. You don't have a change of trend yet on a 1 hour time frame. And we're usually looking for both these to line up. So, but the overall 10-minute chart, it looks pretty good, honestly. I mean, it has a double bottom, has a clear break to the upside. So you have a clear higher high, and this would be a clear lower low with a rejection here, which we got. And then continue this forward. So, and this is typically how I would want to enter a move like this. If we flip to the daily chart, right? Like I don't even know if it's the same target. Where is this? No, it's not the same target. But you could argue that if you enter the trade on a break of that for 1.3R to the 4 hour 50, or you could take it with a 4 hour setup as a CBO or an IBO. But a CBO on the 10-minute time frame is going to be an IBO on the 1 hour most of the time. then I'm able to position size at that point for, over 5R to the same target with having a more precise kind of entry level. So this is typically what I look for, not necessarily this. Like, I don't feel like this is super precise, though you probably catch more movements with this strategy. But I'd have to catch, in this example, like 4 movements to this one. So is it efficient? Not really. And it's more work per se. But yeah, I think I should have entered this essentially probably on a break of this 50 here as it got down and was started to reject. So either right here or like right there, something like that. I think is where it should have been entered. And if we get out of the replay here, I'd just be chilling in this trade still at roughly a break even. So stop would probably be sitting at break even right now, and this trade's either going to continue to push or it's going to come back for an even deeper kind of correction. But it's still something I should have took. So yeah, I have 2 missed trades really today on dollar CAD. I had this 2-minute CBO as well as I had a 10-minute CBO 2 hours later. So, but that's the kind of the cool thing about trading micros, and the more I'm getting comfortable with trading micros, because my background really is trading this daily time frame setup, so really targeting 1-hour runs here. This is what I've done for years and years. So the whole 2-minute 10-minute run stuff is a little newer of a concept to me. It's the same strategy still applies, just stuff moves a bit faster, and there seems to be a little bit of adjustments here and there to make certain things work. But the cool thing about the micro time frames that, say if I miss the 2-minute CBO, all right, well that's going to mean that more than likely I can catch the 10-minute CBO, because a 2-minute CBO should be a 10-minute IBO, which then if they're both successful, the 10-minute IBO is going to turn into a 10-minute CBO, right? So it turns into a 10-minute CBO, which it did. Then, because the 2-minute CBO is right here, which is a 10-minute IBO, turns into a 10-minute CBO, and then gives me another potential entry. And then theoretically, say if this continues up and get another retrace, it could be turning into a 1-hour IBO, and so on and so forth. Like there's like a whole daisy chain effect to it, to where you can get super precise on some of your entries and target some pretty crazy R to R. And that's what I'm trying to dive into and really understand the timing of everything to position size some like 8-to-1s or 10-to-1s or maybe even some 20-to-1 positions, with essentially breaking the stuff all the way down to a 2-minute time frame and looking for, theoretically, if you targeted a breakout, so an ABO on a 2-minute time frame, then the ABO turns into an IBO, then it turns into a CBO. But then there's a daisy chain effect where the 10-minute then starts to go through its process of going from ABO to IBO to CBO. And then the daily time range, so the 1-hour chart will start to go through the same process of ABO, IBO, CBO, and then weekly and monthly. So the daily time frame to the 4-hour to the 1-hour to the 10-minute to the 2-minute is what I'm getting at. So there is the potential to precisely time, almost to perfection, very large moves in the market, or a normal size move on this 1-hour time frame with a very tight stop due to a 2-minute style entry, but a 1-hour style target. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of potential with it. So And then I was playing around some more with this kind of trend line drawn in here, because it's a multi-touch, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of 6-touch trend line. And any trend line that's like 3+ touches is pretty good. You need at least 2 touches for a trend line, but anything 3+, 4+, the better it gets. So pretty decent trend line, especially when you could have started to draw this trend line at this CBO entry, which I didn't at the time. I drew it when price had already formed up here. But a bit of extra confluence because you could have started drawing it off these two right here. But this would have been a style of like just entering on a clear break of the trend line, like right there. So a 2-minute break, stop above the high, and then a target of, the EMAs on a 10-minute time frame. This was a 2-to-1 position essentially. And that would have played out easily. So this is the type of stuff that it breaks down, and sometimes it'll just straight shoot to target. And so this is my theory that I can maybe position size these types entries to, like, most of the time when I'm trying to target an IBO, like I want this to break down. Let's get this out of the way. I want this to break down right here, and I want it to go to roughly halfway. And then I want it to come up, and I want it to retest right there. And then my target is this 2-minute 200, which is the 10-minute 50, right? So there's this pullback happens sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. But if I could enter these trades like this, the entry becomes a little easier. It's just as soon as that break clears, the stop position is pretty simple. It's just a stop clip. And then I'm targeting the same EMA that I'd be targeting with the IBO. But this guarantees me an entry. And it's not guaranteed that it's going to pull back and give me the IBO entry. I prefer the IBO entry because it's confirmation of a trend change with it. And technically, I'm going to have a better stop if this breaks down, even for an IBO. So that's interesting. So I'm keeping my eyes on. I think there's potential for it. Like, I don't really love it on this kind of time frame because I can just swap to a 4-hour and target something like this a lot easier. But you hit a point on these 2-minute where, like, this is still a 7-pip position. Like, I can't get tighter than 5 pips. It just doesn't work. Even 5 pips is pretty daggone tight for me. 7, 8, 9 pips is really easy. It's doable. But I can't get much tighter than 7 pips, which is, if I even target the pullback, sometimes these pullbacks, my position size would be like 2, 3, 4 pips, which I can't take that trade. So in those examples, and the ones that, like, the price is moving where think it's going to go, I can't enter them because either A, they don't pull back, or B, when they do pull back, it's such a tight position size of 3 or 4 pips that I can't take the trade. But I could take the trade in an instance like this, where I'm able to enter on the break of a trend, stop clip, and then target the same target I'd be targeting anyways. So, and then it had an ACB essentially right here. And I was, again, just playing with position size, because this same CBO I took here on the 10-minute time frame is essentially an ABO. So, not ABO, ACB. So like a boom, A, C, B, and then go, right? Usually an ACB is like 1, 2, 3, go. And it gave that kind of entry. You can see it right there on the 2-minute time frame, which this is a great example of 2-minute ACB, 10-minute CBO, 1-hour IBO. Granted, it's not a great 1-hour IBO. It still technically is one. It's just not a great one. But then I was wondering, it's like, all right, could I position size this as a typical ACB? Which a typical ACB is you just enter on a micro trend change, which would be a 5-second kind of trend change. And you'd have to be pretty confident in this, I feel like, to take this trade, like really confident in it. Because you take it on a 5-second break, a stop slightly below some EMAs, and then you're targeting like a 2-to-1 to the high. Technically, I could have targeted like a 4-to-1 to the high with this, though. And then with a, what is this? A 5? Yeah, it's a 5 pip, so as small as I could possibly go. My position size on the 10-minute time frame is 18 pips. So that was a 5.5 R position. Now, say it's 5 pips, it turns it into a 20 R trade with the same exact target. So this is what I'm referencing is like the better I get with these micros, I'm starting to see these like points of entries that if you can time them perfectly, the R to R potential is kind of astronomical. And then it goes from like trying to take 10, 15 trades in a week to you hit one of these in a week. You could take, 4 or 5 trades in a month if you're able to position size some super tight stuff like this. Because even if it doesn't play out for that full movement, but you're able to hold it for half or even a quarter of it, it's still either going to be a 5R or a 10R trade. So it's interesting. I think realistically, if your target's going to be that EMA, you got to hold for at least half and then manage after that. I mean, you'd be break even pretty quickly on this. That's kind of my thought. Like if you're entering on 5 pips, you're essentially going to be on this time frame. My thought right now is to manage it wise. I would manage it like I was trading a 2-minute. So it's going to pop, it's going to break. As soon as it would get to like a 1-to-1, I just move the stop to break even. And then I'm just in the trade and I'm chilling here until something happens. But I'm kind of flipped back to this time frame looking for, price to continue going on. But there's a real possibility to do what it's doing here, where price pulls back and knocks me out, but it's going to knock me out for a break even. So more than likely on these style trades, a lot of them will just be break evens, and then eventually you're going to catch one for 10, 20 R. So again, just something I'm paying attention to as I'm trading these micros. I'm just starting to see like there is a ton of different options. There's a lot of potential when you start combining like all the different time frames with the same strategies, and they all play into each other. My main mentor, he described it as fractals. So they all kind of like fractal down. Yeah, it's fascinating. Either way, so no trades today for me. Really, I think there's one missed trade for me, and that's this 2-minute CBO. As well as I think you could label this 4-hour. I'll move that back to this 4-hour at its standard position sizing of 18 pips. I think you could label this as probably a missed trade too. This necessarily may not net anything, but the first trade should have net like 2R. And then there was those other 2 trades for the day that there was. I guess my point is there was R out there today for me to capture, and I was able to see it. I just didn't execute on how I needed to take it. But I think there's valid reasons to not take the first 2 trades. I think I screwed up the 3rd trade and potentially kind of screwed up the 4th trade here. But I haven't changed my rule yet on entries. But I feel like I'm going to need to. Either way, that's it for me. I will catch you guys tomorrow. See you.